Hello, I'm the Pirate Novelist, your captain through the rough seas of media, and once again, thank you so very much. Well, now it's time for part 2 of this 2-part video set. This is a very special video. This is to celebrate me hitting 50 subscribers, and as of the filming of this video, I've actually hit 59 subscribers, which is crazy. So once again, I want to thank everybody who's watched me or subscribed to me. Thank you so much again. If you haven't watched part 1, I'm going to leave a link in the description below. These 2 sets of videos are me going over my top 50 albums that I own on vinyl. The last video was 50 to 26, and this video is 25 to 1. There is a caveat here: no album that I'm showing you, even though it is ranked 50 or 1, is bad in any regards. This is just my personal opinion and my personal picks based upon quality of the vinyl, what it means to me, and if there's really a story behind it. So, without any further delays, let's go ahead and get started. Number 25. Tegan and Sara, Love You to Death. So this is a recent pickup that I'm sure no one was surprised that popped up on my list. I'm going to show you the front here and the back. This one, like I said in one of my previous videos, was a long time coming. I have the Tegan and Sara 7-inch that came out for Record Store Day, and then this one was just a logical step up. Well, in the scheme of things, it's not my favorite Tegan and Sara album. It's really grown on me in recent listens, and much like I said in my previous video, a lot of my colored ones actually sound pretty good. So this one being a colored one, I was very, very happy to have it. It's different in the scheme of what they've been doing. It's very poppy, but for me, if me being a metalhead, it's kind of weird to, kind of put and talk about a pop album, but at the same time, if I can really hear, the musicianship and everything that kind of went into it and all of that, for me, it makes it all the worthwhile. And this, from beginning to end, is really good. I really like the songs Boyfriend, Stop Desire, and 100X. I think this is just a really solid album overall, and pretty much the perfect way to kick off part 2 of this 2-part video series. Number 24. Is Satanoscillatemymetallicsonatas. Another Record Store Day pick. This one kind of goes without saying. Let me show you the front here. I'll show you the back. This one kind of goes without saying, and I'm still thinking back about the passing of Chris. It's hard for me to put into words, and I like this one. I like this one a little bit more than a copy of their first album, just because, not because I don't know the music of the first album, I get a lot more out of this EP than I did, the first album. And for me, just sonically and with everything that's happened with Soundgarden, it had to make the list. And as I was going through and, ranking and re-listening, this is, again, logically, as I said this before, this is kind of logically where it fell. And Slave and Bulldozers live is just fantastic listening to it. This is a fantastic, ride from beginning to end, even though it is an EP. I still love EPs, and when done right, they can be just fantastic, and that's the case here for this one. What can be said about Soundgarden that hasn't already been said? So for me, this is the logical place to put at number 24. Number 23. Nirvana's Nevermind. As cliche as it probably sounds, I do like Nirvana, and this did make the list. Show you the front and the back. What, again, another band that what can be said that's not already been said. And this album, in the scheme of things, I do love Nirvana, and this being a gift, that's what made it so much more sweeter, is getting this as a gift. Now, in the scheme of overall Seattle grunge, I honestly placed them just a teeny bit lower than a couple of the other bands. Again, this is just personal preference, but for me, I got a lot more out of Alice in Chains, I got a lot more out of Pearl Jam, and I definitely got a lot more out of Soundgarden and Mother Love Bone. So, for me, while they are on my favorites list, for me, they're a little bit lower in the scheme of things. And this is a fantastic album, beginning to end. Wonderful, wonderful pressing. This is on 180 gram, I want to say. This is one of the times where 180 gram actually did it justice. You know, it wasn't warped. It sounds fantastic every single time that I play it. Even, you know, after like the 10th, 20th time or so that I played this, I really enjoy it all the way through. On a personal level, Nirvana just means a lot to me because back when I was just getting into music, not only was this one on my list of, you know, records that I wanted in my collection, but it was a band that hugely, hugely influenced me throughout, you know, my early years of my life. And not only that, Kurt passed away on my birthday. Not my exact birthday, not the day I was born, but pretty close to when I was really young. So I feel a deep connection to, you know, Nirvana because of that. And it's one day where, yes, it is somber, it is my birthday, I get to celebrate two of my favorite bands, Alice in Chains being one of them, and Nirvana being the other. So that's really why it made it so high on the list, even though, again, in the scheme of things, when it comes to Seattle grunge, they are a little bit lower on my list.
Number 22.
Take a look at what you've done.
The Offspring's Ignition. Another Offspring makes the list. First, I'll show you the front here, back. This particular pressing is actually a Hot Topic exclusive. And while this one is semi-warped, it's like one of my most warped records, it still makes the list higher because I gained a love of the Offspring after I saw them live. And this album, when, you know, I was going back and listening to it, listening to the first and listening to the second, which one did, you know, grasp me more, and which one, you know, did I just get kind of lost into the Offspring when I don't have all the other albums? Which one to me was the one that I could kind of get lost into and listen to more and more? And that one was Ignition. From beginning to end, this is just classic punk. And the first Offspring album is classic punk, but this one just refines what the first album had. It made it better. This particular one is on orange vinyl. I think I've shown this before. If I haven't, then I will show you in a future video, because I believe I have not done a colored vinyl video yet, but that'll come another day. So, again, I've already talked to the Offspring to death in the previous video, so I'm not going to go too much longer on this. But as I said just a moment ago, this one was one that I got a deeper meaning out of. And that, for me, is why it made it so much higher than the other Offspring.
Number 21.
Take a look at what you've done.
Chvrches, Every Open Eye. I think Vinyl Collector James would appreciate this one. This is Chvrches, Every Open Eye. Let me open up the gatefold real quick. Show you the reverse. I'm not sure if I've talked about Chvrches enough in my videos. They are a recent band, and recent meaning the last couple of years, that have really touched a deep part of me musically. And I don't have their first album, unfortunately, and that's, you know, when I got into them. But this album, for me, is just a little bit superior to their first album in that it is cohesive to a degree, a little bit more than their first album. And this one, for me, just has songs that have a lot of deep meaning for me. You know, when I talk about music, it has to fuel me. And when it fuels me just the right way, that's why I could say that I love a band. Songs like Clearest Blue, Empty Threat, and, Leave a Trace have just, in the past year, have meant a lot more to me than any other song. And, as much as I say I love Paramore, as much as I say I love any other band, it's this album that's gotten me through quite a bit. And while there are other albums in the scheme of things that are just a bit higher, this one I just wanted to stop and talk about because I think this band is absolutely fantastic. There is a version of Bury It that Hayley Williams actually sang on, and that is absolutely fantastic. It adds just another dimension to the song, and the original is by no means, a bad song. It just elevated it to legendary status in my mind. So I feel this band is not, talked about enough. So while they are a little bit more electronic in the scheme of things, I feel that they should definitely be talked about a little bit more and showcased a little bit more. So that's one reason why I put it on my list. And again, another reason is the deep personal connection to me.
Number 20.
Take a look at what you've done.
The Labyrinth Soundtrack. Again, another recent pickup. Show you the front and the back. And I do apologize if there is a bit of a glare. I'm trying to circumvent that as best I can. Not going to go into too much detail as I went into detail when I actually showed it. But the main reason why this makes it so high on the list is it was a gift from a friend. And when I heard that it was being reissued, I thought, whoa, this is something that absolutely had to be in my collection. I love the Labyrinth movie, and it was really hard to actually find on vinyl. So this being reissued was just kind of something that had to be on my want list. And again, I'm so very thankful to my very best friend who gave me this as a late birthday gift, because this sounds fantastic, and it's another one of those albums that I can just get absolutely sucked into every single time that I listen to it. So if you want to hear a little bit more about that, I'm going to leave a link in the description below of the pickup video that I actually talked about this one for.
Number 19.
Take a look at what you've done.
Alice in Chains live Facelift. And you didn't think Alice in Chains was going to make this list, did ya? Well, they did. This is Alice in Chains' live Facelift. This is the only Alice in Chains I really have on vinyl. I need to remedy that eventually, but for now, this will tide me over. This was a recent record store day pickup, and I'm so very thankful that I have it because it's a live EP that I could just listen to over and over and over again. This was the Lane Staley and Mike Starr era of Alice in Chains, and while I do love Mike Inez, and I have his guitar pick, and I just think back to that show that I had seen so many years ago. You've probably seen the shirt in a couple of my videos, the Alice in Chains shirt. I actually got that at the concert, and I think back to that concert. It's just amazing. Will is, in my opinion, a very good choice to continue the Alice in Chains legacy. And I know some people out there feel that it just should have ended after, Lane had passed. I feel that Will was, a rightful successor to Lane, and, he brings his own style to it, and hearing the original songs with his voice, he fits the bill, in my opinion, so very, very much. There's another important reason why I absolutely love Alice in Chains. Not only did Kurt Cobain passed on my birthday at one point in my life, but Lane Staley did too. And for me to be able to celebrate both Alice in Chains and Nirvana on my birthday, and I know it's very somber, the day that they're passing, but for me makes it that much more special that I can actually celebrate that. And this just had to make the list just because purely sentimental reasons. And I know this is really a placeholder until I can get Dirt and, Black Gives Way to Blue and The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here. Just, even though this is a placeholder, for me, it is not a placeholder in my heart. This is a fantastic addition to my collection. And if you have not heard this, you really should go, I think there's a recording of it on YouTube. If there's not, there are ways to go out there and stream it. But this is just a fantastic, nicely recorded EP. And it's a definite pickup if you are an Alice in Chains fan of any sorts. I'm not sure how hard the vinyl is to come by. I believe this was... I'm not sure how many I had, but I know I am number 314. I'm not sure how many there were, maybe like 1,000 or so. I'm not too sure, but I had number 314, and this is just fantastic.
Number 18.
Take a look at what you've done.
Halestorm, Into the Wildlife. I'm not sure if I've talked about Halestorm before. If I haven't, shame on me. This is their album, Into the Wildlife. Show you the back here. Show you the awesome gatefold. And then I'll show you the reverse gatefold. Halestorm is a band that I share absolute love with one of my close friends, and we've seen them a couple of times live, and this album just blows me away every single time that I listen to it. It's a blend of classic, the heavy rock and roll, and a mix of what rock and roll is doing right now into this amalgamation of awesome. Lzzy Hale just has one of those fantastic voices that I could just listen to over and over again. And oftentimes I actually listen to them when I'm working out. They are just so awesome and amazing live. And I have the Record Store Day in the Wildlife Live, which is on this really cool gold vinyl. I actually showed that in a recent Record Store Day pickup video. I'm not too sure how many years ago that was. I think it was this past year. Either that or it was last year. I'll just link that video in the description below so you can check it out. But again, this is just a fantastic album. I Like It Heavy is just, oh my gosh, that is one of the best rock songs I've ever heard in my life. I Am the Fire is absolutely fantastic. Just the way this album flows is beyond words for me. And it made it in so high on this list just because of not only my connection to my love of the band, but just how kick-ass this album is. If you haven't checked it out, please check it out.
Number 17.
Take a look at what you've done.
Led Zeppelin IV. The one that started it all. Show you the front and the back. And then I'll show you the gatefold to the best of my ability. There we go. And the reverse gatefold. This is another album that's been talked to death about. So there's not too much more I could say musically on this, as so much so as what it means to me. This album right here I credit to my love of vinyl and what really kick-started my collection. Now, I inherited my parents' collection, and it was a large sum. Some of it being Chicago, some of it being, America, this and that. So when I went to my favorite record store for the first time, I was just looking through, and I thought back to when I had a Twitter conversation with John McDougall of Tonight Alive, and I'd said, well, what's a record that you absolutely love on vinyl? Because, I was just starting to look, and she had suggested this one right here. And this was the very first one that I had picked up. My mom got it for me that day, and ever since, I've just been collecting vinyl. For me to say, what these songs mean to me, Stairway to Heaven is absolute classic. Going to California is classic. When the Levee Breaks, classic. It's not the actual songs, but the deep meaning as to why it made this spot.
Number 16.
Take a look at what you've done.
Jule Vera's Friendly Enemies. This is Jule Vera's Friendly Enemies. This is just one of those other EPs that just absolutely blew me away from the get-go. This was a suggestion from a very close friend of mine who got me into JoJo and wanting to buy that JoJo record that I talked about in the previous video. What can I say about this? This is just fantastic from beginning to end. Light the Night is just fantastic. I just find myself listening to this one more and more, and I think this one in particular is my most listened to record. And it's probably one of the best sounding records that I have overall in terms of clicks and pops. But there were other ones that meant a little bit more to me than just this one. So that's why it makes it just a teeny bit lower on the list than it should. But that by no means knocks it. It's absolutely fantastic from beginning to end. And in my opinion, it's just too short. And I guess that's what an EP is supposed to. It's supposed to grab your attention and make you want more from the band. Luckily, they have a new album coming out. I am very excited for that. I'm not sure if I'm going to pick that up on a vinyl, but I will definitely give it a listen.
Number 15.
Take a look at what you've done.
Within Temptation, Hydra. Within Temptation's Hydra. Well, first of all, this is actually a tour vinyl, and I'll get to that in just a second. Let me show you the front and the back. Pretty plain, but it has a lovely gatefold. And here I'll show you the reverse gatefold. So I took a trip to another state to see this particular band in Amaranthi live in concert about 3 or so years ago, and one of the best concerts I've ever seen in a very small venue for a band that rarely comes over to the US. And I absolutely had to pick this up because I was so impressed with their live show and everything. And my goodness, this is one of the best symphonic metal albums that I've heard in a very long time. And just from beginning to end, it's just fantastic. There's even a song with Exhibit on there, and I thought that was absolutely golden from beginning to end. Another song features Tarja from, Nightwish and her own solo career, and that just kind of kicks everything off. My all-time favorite Within Temptation song, Covered by Roses, is on here. And just when that song comes on my stereo, I feel myself getting lost in the music. And for me, if I can get lost in a song, even if it's just for a moment, that means the world to me. And that's why I made it on the list. If you haven't checked out Within Temptation, they are a symphonic metal band, so that means it sounds almost like they got a symphony orchestra going, but it has some really awesome metal music in it. So it plays to my nature of loving music, because I do love symphonies and all of that, because I played trumpet in band when I was in high school, so it plays to my mentality of loving the classical music and loving metal itself.
Number 14.
Take a look at what you've done.
Evanescence, Fallen. This one had to make the list too. Show you the front and the back. It's not a gatefold, but that's okay. In terms of monetary value, this record is actually my most valued record, which surprised me. The same friend that I saw Within Temptation with actually convinced me to buy this when I went to the same record store, my favorite record store that I always tend to go to when I'm buying things. So I'm eternally grateful for spending what I did to get this. And this is another one of those fantastic albums, beginning to end, classic album. And each time I listen, it sounds fantastic from beginning to end. Absolutely worth it. For me, Evanescence was a band that I loved in high school, and I still love now. But it's probably, if I didn't pick Linkin Park in my 7 Deadly Sins video, Evanescence would be in as the pick for the band that I don't listen to as much as I used to. I still pop this on from time to time because I absolutely love it, but I'm not as heavy into the music as I once was with Evanescence, and that's why it's a little bit lower. It's a little bit lower on this video's list.
Number 13.
Take a look at what you've done.
Taylor Swift's 1989. Oh, the irony of this pick. And I'll explain that in just a second. Taylor Swift's 1989. Show you the front here. Show you the gatefold. Show you the back. And of course, I'll show you the reverse gatefold. fold. I'm sorry if this confuses you. I'm sorry if I lose any metal credit, but I adore Taylor Swift. I've been a fan for a very, very long time. And unfortunately, this is the only record that I actually have on vinyl. I'm saving up to get my favorite album of hers, which is Speak Now. And I'm going to get Red and eventually her self-titled. It's on my list to get, but oh my gosh. This album was different in the scheme of things. Different than most of her catalog, and that's okay. For me, if an artist wants to try something new and something different and I really dig it, that's cool by me. I absolutely adore this album, beginning to end, much like all her albums. If I didn't choose Paramore as my gluttony pick in the 7 Deadly Sins video, I would have chosen Taylor Swift. What's ironic about this pick is, if you know Taylor Swift and you know a whole bunch of things about her, 13 is a number that permeates a lot of the things she does. So she writes a 13 on her hand when she's performing live. She does a lot of things with the number 13. So having her be at the 13th pick, it kind of just fell where it did, but I kind of find it funny how ironic that is. So that's all I pretty much have to say about that. I honestly love Taylor Swift. If you don't, that's cool. But for me personally, her music has a lot of deep meaning, and I have a lot of deep connections through friends I've met and made through her music. So yeah, that's the main reason why I made this slot.
Number 12.
Take a look at what you've done.
Polaris, music from the adventures of Pete and Pete. This is my quintessential record store day pickup. This is Polaris, music from the adventures of Pete and Pete. I'll show you the front and the back. This is the soundtrack from the show, The Adventures of Pete and Pete. This is the fictional band Polaris, well, real band, because they put out an album. But this is the band that wrote the intro song, Hey Sandy. And just from beginning to end, it's pure nostalgia for me, because I loved that show as a kid. And this was one that I absolutely had to have. And it was one of those ones where I got up really early in the morning, stood in line very early, got a very early number in line because for record store day, the store that I go to gives out tickets and you actually get numbers. So once you get a number, you're really just waiting to get a number, of course. But once you get your number, you can go off, have breakfast, go off, get your coffee, use the restroom if you want to, and come back. But this was one that I absolutely had to have, and I'm so very, very thankful that I was at that perfect spot in line to grab this. I think there was only like 1 or 2 of them that were there. So I'm so very thankful. And from beginning to end, this is just a pure nostalgia pick.
Number 11.
Take a look at what you've done.
Maren Morris's Hero. A country pick made the list. This is Maren Morris's Hero. My goodness, this is just an album that I could just put on and instantly just fall in love with from beginning to end. You know, Sugar is fantastic. My Church, 80s Mercedes. There is not a bad song on this whatsoever. And this is the first time in a very long time that I absolutely love a country album from beginning to end. And I'm not saying that I don't love country. It's just in the scheme of things and where my music kind of lies and where, you know, my taste lies, I'm generally in the rock and the metal and the heavier side of things when it comes to that. So this makes it so high on the list just because I love Maren Morris's voice to death. She has this way of singing and way of conveying things that I have not heard in a very, very long time from a female artist. And I dig it. And every single time, you know, I feel myself getting lost in the music. And what better way to kind of just talk about something is if you get lost in the music. So if you're not into too much country, but you want a little bit of a fresh take on country, Maren Morris is your gal.
Number 10.
Take a look at what you've done.
Pearl Jam's 10. What do you know? Another perfect marrying of numbers. Pearl Jam made it on the list again. Show you this real quick. Show you the wonderful gatefold. Show you the back. Be very careful with this because there is a record on both sides of this, because there's a, with this release, there is the original mix and there's a remix, or redux as they call it. Actually, you know what? This way. Put it that way so you can see it a little better. I've already talked to death about Pearl Jam. As much as I love Yield, I feel a deeper connection to 10. It has Black, it has Jeremy, and I know, oh, you like that because it's the greatest hits, eh? No, it's just, for me, the songs that mean the most to me, other than the Avocado record, are right here on this record itself. When I think back to when I was just a casual Pearl Jam fan, I found myself listening to this album the most, and, you know, I love Once. It's a fantastic song. You know, it's kind of funny, is Maren Morris's album, which was just a couple of picks ago, ends with the song Once, and this one actually opens with a song called Once, which is kind of crazy. So, for me, I can talk about Pearl Jam all day. You know, I've already talked about them in my live video, and I've already talked about them in the pickup, and I've talked about them previous, so I'm not going to bore you too much more on that.
Number 9.
Take a look at what you've done.
Volbeat's Beyond Hell, Above Heaven. Volbeat is now on the list. And you thought it wasn't going to make the list, didn't ya? This is Beyond Hell, Above Heaven. Here's the front. Here's the back. I'm going to show you it upside down. And upside down. And there's the gatefold. The reverse. And just for fun, reverse upside down. I already talked about this album in the video that I showed you when I picked this up. This was a record store day piece. But just to kind of give you an overview, I absolutely adore the band Volbeat. They're one of my favorite metal bands of all time, and they rarely come around these parts in the US, so seeing them at least one time, getting to meet them, was absolutely fantastic. And now that they have their new album out, I'm begging and praying that they actually make a tour around this area where I live. This album is the first album that I got into them with, just because Heaven Nor Hell, the song that got me into them, this is one of those albums that's just fantastic from beginning to end. And The Mirror and the Ripper is a fantastic song. This, Evelyn, or Evelyn as they say it, is fantastic. It's fantastic beginning to end. There's no bad Volbeat song in my opinion. And while there is one more album, actually two more, that I rank a little bit higher than this one, my absolute favorite I do not have on vinyl, and that is Guitar Gangsters of Cadillac Blood, which is the album that came out before this. But this is actually what's kind of cool about Volbeat, is a couple of their songs actually kind of intermix. So this album is actually a sequel to their previous album, which I thought was cool. So they talk about Mr. Cadillac, who was the guitar gangster in the previous album, and how, you know, where his story ends in the scheme of what they wanted to do with the album. So I love that about Volbeat, is they can take a concept and just kind of roll with it through the entire album. And this one is absolutely fantastic from beginning to end. And Volbeat just means a little bit more to me than Pearl Jam does. And I know Pearl Jam means the world to me, and that's, you know, saying quite a bit for me putting it just above 10. But this album is, oh my goodness, I cannot praise this album enough.
Number 8.
Take a look at what you've done.
Paramore's Riot. Paramore makes the list again. If I haven't said it enough, Paramore is my favorite band of all time. But there is a caveat here. I do not have Brand New Eyes on vinyl, so it will be not on the list. It would have been on the list probably at this point or at another previous point in this video, but I just do not have it, and that's why it's not on the list. For shame on me, I know, but I'm limited to what I have on vinyl. So I'm going to show you the front here real quick, and the back. Paramore is a band that I've talked to death about, and honestly, it was really hard to rank these albums, because each Paramore album to me, and I said this in my previous video, each Paramore album to me during parts of my life meant a certain thing. And I'm able to go back and listen to it with, rose-colored glasses and think back to those times fondly, but look back and say, well, my mindset was different back then. I was, a different person back then. And that can be said about Riot. But Riot, just beginning to end, is just a little bit better of an album than their self-titled album in terms of what it means to me and musically. And this used to be really hard for me to look critically on my favorite bands, but I can now. And thinking back, Riot had just so much more songs that meant to me. And when I think back to when I first listened to them after my dad had passed away, I think back to this party that I had, actually in this very room, that I'm shooting in. I didn't have this set up back then, and I didn't have my YouTube back then, but we held a LAN party, computer party here, and that was the night that I first fully listened to Paramore, and I fell in love that night. And a bunch of the songs that I listened to via Project Playlist, if you don't remember what that was, it was just basically a really nice site that you could create a playlist for and just sit there and listen to it. And me and one of my close friends, we used to make playlists all the time, back and forth, and I just think back fondly to that Paramore playlist, and most of the songs from Riot were on there, because I think Brand New Eyes hadn't been out just yet. The final Riot had been put out, and that's a live album. That one is not on vinyl. I wish it was, because that is a fantastic live album from beginning to end. But so I don't talk too much more about Paramore than needs to be said, this album is just one that I have too many fond memories to put it any lower or any higher on the list.
Number 7.
Take a look at what you've done.
Volbeat's Outlaw Gentlemen and Shady Ladies. Volbeat makes the list again, and so very quick too. This is Volbeat's Outlaw Gentlemen and Shady Ladies. Show you the front and the back. Show you the really awesome gatefold. And then the reverse gatefold. And then, of course, if I haven't shown the back, I'll show it again. This one ranks just a little bit above Riot because of what some of the songs mean to me. So Our Loved Ones, which is pretty much the studio end to the record, means a lot to me. There are extra songs on Beyond Hell Above Heaven and this, but I only count them when I'm listening to the record. I don't count them as a whole from when I'm sitting and listening to it on my phone or in my car. And as a whole, this one is just a little bit stronger of an album than the other Volbeat that I put on the list, mainly because of, again, Doc Holliday, fantastic song. Our Loved Ones, fantastic song. Lola Montez, I have such a deep connection with that song with me and a very close friend of mine, that I feel a deep connection to this album. And again, that's why it makes the list, is each one of these albums, is a part of me. And as we get closer and closer, closer and closer to the end, the more and more I feel deeply and more connected to each album that, in turn. And then, of course, there's Lonesome Rider, which I would love to cover that song one day. And there's a couple of people that I would love to do a duet with, if I could be so blessed to do so. And that song just, I love it to death. And I love that this is so Western themes. And how, like I said, just in a previous pick, that the Volbeat albums from beginning to end are themed, and this one just as a cohesive whole, not being a continuation, just being kind of its own thing, and even their newest album being kind of their own thing and not being a continuation of this album. I just feel like this is, as a cohesive whole, just a little bit better than the previous Paramore album and the previous Volbeat album. And again, like I said in the first video, this is by no means a knock against any of the albums. Every single one of these albums on this list are absolutely, go out, get them, and listen to them.
Number 6.
Take a look at what you've done.
Marcy Playground's self-titled. Another record store day pickup. Here's the front, and here's the back. That's interesting. Even though there's track numbers, it says 1 through 6, 1 through 6. Kind of find that interesting. This one, I recently had a not so good day. I came home with a headache from work, and I just really wanted an album just to kind of sit and mellow out to. You know, just put a cold compress on my head and just kind of mellow out to after a bad day. And this one I popped on, and just the vibe that I got from it, it relaxed me so very much. And listening back again, this is one of my best sounding records in my collection. I could put it on, I don't hear any clicks, don't hear any pops. If I'm really OCD about it, I probably could hear them, but this one is, oh my gosh. I love it from beginning to end, and it's a recent album that, you know, I didn't like Sex and Candy at first, but it's a song that's kind of grown on me in recent years, and hearing it in context of the full album, I finally get that song, and I know it's almost like a one-hit wonder, quote-unquote one-hit wonder. The entire album around it is, oh my gosh, absolutely fantastic, and Sex and Candy is not the best song on the album, believe it or not. There is just, from beginning to end, it's just one of those fantastic, fantastic, underrated albums. And for me, it's just the more and more I listen to it, the more and more I get engrossed, and I'm more and more involved with the lyrics and the music itself. It makes this high on the list just for the quality of the vinyl and the quality of the music and the mastering. This was from the original master tapes, and I still have the hype sticker. Let me get it for you. And this, even though this was on, you know, a 2500 limited run and it has the 7-inch, 7-inch is okay. I mean, I find that when I'm doing my 7 inches, it's hard to brush them, but I still listen to it as part of this as a cohesive whole. It just engrosses me the entire time that I listen to it, and that's why I make a list.
Number 5.
Take a look at what you've done.
21 Pilots, Vessel. 21 Pilots makes the list again. This is Vessel. Show you the front. Show you the awesome back. If 21 Pilots, Blurry Face got me through a lot, Vessel got me through a lot more. And I think back to this album, and you know, the last year of me graduating and me seeing 21 Pilots before they got big with AWOL Nation at my university as our homecoming concert, I think back to that show and just, oh my gosh, how amazing and engrossing that show was, and how amazing and engrossing this album is for me. And I can't put into words, honestly, what this album means to me. And well, there are a couple of more albums that mean just a little bit more to me. This one, in terms of saving my life through music, this is just one of those that it saved me through music in. While it has a few clicks and pops, and it's not, arguably Marcy Playground is the better quality sound version with the clicks and the pops and all of that, this one has too deep a meaning for me to knock it any more down. And it's, you know, as strict as I was on a whole bunch of albums, this one I could be strict only so and so much because of how much the music means to me. And this album is just another album that's fantastic from beginning to end. And I could talk to death about all these records, but this one, for me, deep in my heart and deep in my soul, means just a little bit more than the Marcy Playground album.
Number 4.
Take a look at what you've done.
Red Sun Rising's Polyester Zeal. Another album that I have talked to death before on this channel. Show you the front and the back. What can I say that's not already been said? Not a lot, to be honest. I'm wearing my shirt that I actually got signed by the band when I saw them. And this album just When I think of Record Store Day and the fond memories that I have on Record Store Day, there are two albums that I think of. The Polaris one, which I showed earlier, and this one. When I think of Record Store Day and what it means in, you know, as a whole, and those rare pieces and the ones to kind of look out for and the ones that kind of mean, you know, the most to a certain to people, this one means a lot to me. And again, another one that's just fantastic beginning to end. And other than Jule, Vera, this is one that I listen to just non-stop, constantly, and each time I listen to it, it just gets better and better and better and better every time I listen to it. Since I've talked this one to death, and I've talked about it in other videos, I'm not going to say too much more on it, but this album just means quite a bit to me. And when I think back to some of the music that, you know, would be, you know, a desert island record, this one would be definitely a desert island record for me.
Number 3.
Take a look at what you've done.
Paris's White Noise. Where do I even begin with this awesome record? Well, first I could show you the record. I could show you the stuff on it. Here's the front, and here's the back. I don't know if you could see, but the actual songs are kind of like, the song names are kind of not embossed, but kind of hidden in the dark. Hopefully you can see that if I put that up there. And I do apologize for the glare. I'm trying more and more each video to kind of get things rolling with this. This is one of the best sounding albums in my collection. This actually sounds better than the Marcy Playground record. And it's one of my favorite colored pressings as well. And in terms of just sonically and otherwise being engulfed in the music, this just engulfs me just a teeny bit more than Red Sun Rising. And I don't know if it's just from the vocals to the actual music itself. Just for me, beginning to end, it's one of my absolute favorite records. Just one that in recent years has been, you know, a favorite of mine. And I keep revisiting it over and over again when I want to just pull out a record. When I think, oh, do I put on something new? Nah, I'll just put on Paris. I know I love it. So for me, just to be able to listen to it over and over and over again, and it just get better and better with each listen, that's a strong indication that it should be talked about more, and it should be higher on the list. And that's why it made it so high on the list. It's just one that I keep revisiting over and over and over again.
Number 2.
Take a look at what you've done.
Temple of the Dogs, self-titled. I couldn't go without this album being on my list. This, what can I say? Well, again, for starters, let me show you the actual front and the back. When I started collecting, I had not a laundry list, but a list of records that I absolutely wanted to have. And I considered 2 of them to be very holy grails in my book. And it wasn't because, you know, they were hard to get, this or that. It was because the meaning of the songs on them. And for me, this grail, it just means a lot to me. And when I entered Vinyl Collector James's first contest, there was a recent one that he had, but there was one that he had previously, and that was one when I used to use the gray backgrounds, and when I was first starting my channel, I had won that contest. And this was the record I had picked as the prize. And I am so ever thankful to you, James. And I always love watching your channel. And I'm going to give a shout out here to Vinyl Collector James. Because if it wasn't for that contest and for me entering, I wouldn't be on YouTube right now. I wouldn't be sitting here celebrating 50 subscribers. And I wouldn't have this record right here. So from the bottom of my heart, James, thank you so very much. And just with the recent passing of Chris Cornell, this album had deep meaning to me at the beginning when I first heard it, but it just has so much more deep meaning to me. And in terms of meaning, you know, Billy Joel should be up here at second, but this one beat it out just because not only of recent events, but just in my life, I tend to revisit this album. Say Hello to Heaven is one of the most beautiful songs I ever heard in my life. And Hunger Strike is one of those early songs that I knew every word to. And I loved it for the story behind it and for the music itself. And each time I listen to that, my soul gets sucked in even more and more, and I just do not get tired of it. And this album, just beginning to end, even though it being a tribute for Andrew Wood, is just... I find it hard to put into words. But this one is so high up here, just because in my life, when it comes to Seattle music and just thinking back on my life, this one means just a whole hell of a lot to me.
Number 1.
Take a look at what you've done.
Paramore's All We Know Is Falling. If Temple of the Dog was a holy grail, this was my holiest of grails. Show you the front and the back. As I said in the previous pick, I had a list of records that I absolutely wanted. And this particular record was highest on my list. Now this is the recent reissue. It's not the 10-year anniversary, which has 2 of the underrated songs on it that were rarely released by Paramore. This isn't the original press. This is just a recent reissue press. But in terms of what the music meant to me, in terms of sound quality, package quality, the whole shebang, this tops the list. This music I revisit over and over and over again, and it stands the test of time for me. Each time I listen to this album, while the self-titled album, the Riot album, even Brand New Eyes, I can go back and listen to, there's still a grain of salt to it. And even After Laughter, there's a grain of salt to it. But this one for me has stood the test of time. And this one for me has the most songs that mean a lot to me. When my father passed away, I listened to Paramore heavily, and I still do. But the song Emergency, when I think of the lyrics to that song, I've seen you cry way too many times when you deserve to be alive, and I've seen love die way too many times. It reminded me that I needed to keep going, that this pain that I felt from my dad passing was temporary, and this album just got me through it the most. And for being a reissue, it's one of the best sounding reissues. And for the reissue campaign, I have yet to look at Brand New Eyes, but in terms of what I have, from Riot to this, which was better, it was this. Not only for the sound quality, not only for the vinyl itself, not only for the inner sleeve, which Riot just basically had just a lyric sheet. This actually recreated a really nice, heavy, thick cardboard inner sleeve that was like the original. And this... Paramore have not been this raw in a very long time. They have in After Laughter. And this... When I talk about albums that touch me deep, that touch me into the very essence of who I am, this is the album that I tell people about. And that is why it tops my list. So that about wraps it up for my top 50. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, could you leave a thumbs up for me and let me know that you liked it? Comment down below if you've heard of any of these bands overall in both videos. And, just what you're listening to right now, because I'm always into listening to new artists. Again, I'm so very, very thankful for every one of my subscribers. And don't think just because I'm doing this now, that means the end. Oh no, I got a lot more planned for this channel. I'm hoping to get onto a regular schedule, but again, life kind of gets in the way. So I hope you will enjoy what I have coming up. So thank you to 50 subscribers, and here's to 100 subscribers. But until then, as I always say, when the waters get rough, keep on sailing.